Unfortunately, talking about COVID. Uh, we do honestly, and this is Dr. Nadine Dhawan's statement, that the pandemic is over, but Omicron slash COVID is not. So that is what we are going to essentially be talking about among the COVID update from around the world. Without much delay, I would hand it over to Dr. Nithi to carry the session forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meenakshi. So this week, I actually wanted to do a midweek session because of the various things that I came across, because of the various papers that I read. And we have been discussing this, that this pandemic can play out in 2 or 3 different ways. One is that the human beings, the virus no longer remains novel, that we begin to recognize it. Because remember, sir used to say, virus nahi marta hai. Often people don't die in the replicative phase of the virus. They die in the inflammatory or the thrombotic phase of the virus. So it is the inappropriate immune response because the body is not familiar with the virus and responds inappropriately to it. So either we can begin to recognize the virus, or the virus can become endemic, keep sprouting in pockets, but largely stay down. Or a third scenario, which is the most desirable scenario, is that, like smallpox, we are eventually able to get rid of the virus. So several things came up in this week which reiterate that at least the pandemic phase is on its way out. And we are going to discuss those today and see where that takes us. So here goes. We'll also briefly touch upon the essential drug list that everybody can have, so that early treatment is, and we're not going to talk dosages. We are only going to, so this is a disclaimer, this is not for medical advice. Medical advice is only for doctors to give. So people who watch on YouTube, don't expect us to tell you dosages. But there is an essential drug list that can be started early. So is the pandemic over? Probably, and there are reasons to believe so. The pandemic law of FAR also predicts that this is how it will be. The numbers are pointing to it, but COVID is not. And COVID will not be over till we can comprehensively say that the emerging mutations have stopped happening, which cannot happen. So we have to learn to live with this. Can you see this?
Yes, I can see a daily new confirmed COVID on Jan 1, 2020.
Yeah. So we are following this on a fortnightly basis. If you see, UK on the 1st of January was nearly 2,250, 280 cases per million. US was 1,000. Israel, with its small population, was 404. Ethiopia, with its practically zero vaccination, and we'll come to that, was 34. India was 10. Japan was 2. If you remember, Dr. Meenakshi, we used to say that it's about 29th of December or 30th of December that our wave started.
I have been saying 27th. Yeah, so the same, similar, yeah.
End of December. So beginning of January, when we could say that, okay, the graph started shooting up, we were at 10. 15 days later, Israel has gone up to the top, and this is despite 4 boosters. This is like 4 vaccines have been given to nearly 90% of the population. They have gone up to nearly 4,000 per million with a small population of highly vaccinated individuals. US has doubled its numbers in a fortnight. UK has, okay, so UK over here is 2,000. UK over here has come down. In this fortnight, UK has come down. India from 10 has become 152. Japan from 2 has risen up to nearly 100. And Ethiopia from 34 has gone down to 14. Come down to the end of January now. Israel is further climbing up. It is nearly 9,000. US has comprehensively started coming down. UK has comprehensively started coming down. Japan is on its way up. India is, we can see it in the graph, it's kind of slightly still there, but India has on the graph started coming down, but Ethiopia comprehensively coming down. If I magnify this part of the graph, let me see. If I magnify this part of the graph, you see Ethiopia is right at the baseline. South Africa is also flat. India is also flat, all clustered here. Japan is kind of going up. The others are coming down. Israel made its downward journey, but it is showing spikes. It's kind of going up and down in a sawtooth manner. This, our World in Data had done something very interesting. They have moved the peaks in such a way. Let me see if I can show you a magnified view. Can you see it now? So they have,
I can see 3 different graphs.
Yeah. So what they have done, our World in Data, they have matched the peaks of ventilated patients, confirmed deaths, patients in hospital, and confirmed cases for some representative countries. United Kingdom, United States, they've done it for Spain and Israel, and I think a couple of more. India is not one of them. So though we see a lag in the peak, they have adjusted that so that you can see which numbers correspond to which hospitalizations, deaths, and ventilations. The baseline here they have used is keeping Delta wave as the 0 line. So when they say that confirmed cases 248%, that means 248% over the Delta maximum. So patients admitted in the hospital for UK was 44% higher. Confirmed deaths were about 20% higher, and patients ventilated were about 13%. This is how they have mapped UK's wave. In the US, the numbers, if you see, the hospital admissions now have begun to come down, but they have followed the peak quite reliably and closely in each of the graphs. In Israel, you see how the numbers are going up. This is just about beginning to come down, but though the numbers are less, the confirmed deaths, the ICU admissions, and the patients in hospital continue to follow this graph and less than the Delta wave. if we look at how Omicron has taken over the world, Japan now they're saying 100%, UK 99%, South Africa 99%, Israel 99%, US 98%, India 97%. So whether it is Omicron B1 or Omicron B2, these sublineages are somewhat matching, except that the BA2 does not have S gene dropout. So they've taken over the world. If we look at the, and this is a very busy graph, but just look at this side of the graph. So if we're looking at a reproductive number of 2, that means every patient potentially can infect 2 more. Japan's R number is coming down. Israel's is going up and down. India is approaching 1. UK here, the red one, is below 1. South Africa, this maroon, below 1. Ethiopia, look at where it is, nearly 0. So, more clearly visible here, Japan on its way down, Israel on its way up and down, not quite comprehensively down, India on its way down, but still higher than 1. US below 1, South Africa, UK below 1, Ethiopia nearly 0.4. So, is this a function of vaccination? Ethiopia is barely vaccinated. You look at this.
Dr. Nidhi, I don't think your slides are moving.
Are they moving now? Should I stop share and resume share?
Yeah, please.
Is it moving now? Can you see
Yes.
the?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Ethiopia here is less than 10% vaccinated. And Israel, we said, has more than 4 doses. So if we are looking at vaccination as the reason why Ethiopia has such low numbers, probably not. Look at US. Now you see the numbers are coming down and they're following what we call the Farr's law, the Michael Farr's law. The rate at which it goes up is the rate at which it comes down. Look at UK. The rate at which it goes up is the rate at which it comes down. The rate at which it goes up is the rate at which it comes down. Look at South Africa. The rate at which it went up is the rate at which it came down. Look at Israel. It's kind of sawtooth, going up, coming down, going up, coming down. So we don't know whether this is really on its way down or will it go up again. We'll have to wait for another maybe week to figure that one out. Look at India. On its way up, on its way down. This slope is the same. We are expecting that this is now on its way down, and somewhere around the middle of February or the 3rd week of February, it is going to. So it started over here. You see, this is this point is the inflection point that I took, 2nd of January. So if 2nd of January to 20th of January, that is roughly 20 days. So another 20 days, 3 weeks, we should expect the graph to come back. Again, something that we need to watch. But look at the deaths. The baseline slightly up, but we were saying we have to watch whether there is a delay death button on this one, but probably not. As far as the world experience goes, probably not. Delhi, the rate at which it went up is the rate at which it came down. This definitely now is on its way out. Maybe a function of less testing, but if we are talking about rates, then definitely it's on its way out. Maharashtra, following the FARS law, on its way out. Uttar Pradesh, following the FARS law, same slope, on its way out. Kerala, still no sign, but numbers are not rising at that alarming rate that would overwhelm the hospitals. So this is from Hindustan Times. They say that in nearly 29 states and union territories, it looks like the wave has started falling. The biggest drop has been seen in West Bengal, Delhi, Jharkhand, Bihar, and Tripura. There are some states like Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, which are still not showing the fall that we are looking for. The active case trajectory, however, is beginning to show the downward trend. As of 28th of January, they have come down from, if you remember, the previous one was nearly 40, so we've come down to 20. The previous positivity had gone up to nearly 19, 20, 21. Now it is down to 17. Daily positivity is also coming down. So recovery rate of nearly 93.89%. Interestingly, the first time that I have seen in this particular wave that the new cases added in 24 hours was 235,000, but the patients recovered was 335,000. So even this number is responsible for why the active caseload is falling. If we look at what is happening in India in the last 30 days, we and if we say the total cases, Maharashtra has nearly 20% of the total share, and our cardinal states, Delhi has nearly 8%, Kerala 10%, Uttar Pradesh about 6% or 5%. And if you look at the deaths from total, Kerala has the lion's share of deaths, about 55, 56%. Delhi about 5%, whereas Uttar Pradesh about 2-3%. So I've heard very polarizing views about the pandemic, both in terms of whether it is ivermectin or therapeutics, or it is vaccination, or it is the political response. I think we should let science and logic prevail. I think public health data speaks for itself, and I think we should use whatever it is that we have in order to improve our outcomes. What we all have been emphasizing, early treatment is the only way out of this pandemic, even when it becomes endemic. Early treatment will continue to be the way to treat it. And the line that we have been emphasizing for the last couple of weeks treat the symptoms, follow the signs. That is what we should make the mantra for the coming days. If you look at Uttar Pradesh, it has 17%, nearly 20% of India's population, accounts for about 5% of cases. Kerala has about 3% of India's population and accounts for nearly 10% of cases. Here, the deaths are nearly 1.5% of the total COVID deaths reported in India. And here it is nearly 60% of the COVID deaths reported in India. States that are recording a decline in cases and positivity, we've already gone through this. West Bengal and Delhi lead the charts. Now, this was published on 23rd of December, and it was slightly worrisome that there is striking antibody evasion manifested by Omicron variant. But it is also expected, right? Because when we are talking about neutralizing antibodies, and we are talking about antibodies which are directed to the spike protein, and we are talking about a variant which is largely mutating in the spike protein, we expect this escape to happen. So this was about, this is a direct quote from the article, that even serum from persons vaccinated and boosted with mRNA-based vaccines exhibited substantially diminished neutralizing activity against B11529 by evaluating a panel of monoclonal antibodies to all known epitope clusters on the spike protein. We noted that the activity of 17 of the 19 antibodies tested were either abolished or impaired, including ones currently authorized or approved in use in patients. In addition, we identified 4 new spike mutations, these that confer greater antibody resistance. So, whenever we talk about monoclonal response, and which is where the Covaxin would score over other vaccines. Covaxin is the only vaccine which is polyclonal in its response because it has all viral components. All other vaccines are based on the spike protein. The advantage with adenoviral or vector viral vaccines would be that there is a degree of cross-reactivity, and we'll come to that also. This was the report which came out, today is what, 30th? 2 days ago. This report is eye-opening. I mean, you can, this is a morbidity mortality weekly report. Everywhere in the press, on social media platforms, everywhere it is exploding that finally CDC is saying that natural immunity works. So what did they do in this study? They this is an age-adjusted observational study in which populations of California and New York were converted into 4 cohorts. The cohorts were unvaccinated, uninfected, vaccinated, uninfected, vaccinated, infected, infected, unvaccinated. So the combination of vaccination and infection. So these, and we'll see the data. It is eye-opening what can happen. So vaccination and infection together, or what we have been calling hybrid immunity, had much lower rate of hospitalizations than other cohorts. So vaccination does work. Definitely vaccination works. Natural immunity, infection without vaccination, however, had almost similar outcomes. So it appears like infection is what is conferring the advantage. Not to say that we should be seeking out infection, but if a natural infection is happening and you are recovering from it, you are likely to get a robust, polyclonal, good immunity. Now, as new variants emerge, is the mildness of Omicron a function of the virus or a function of the immunity of the population, is something that this data is pointing towards. So infection-derived immunity was greater during and after Delta wave. This is at the time when the vaccine-derived immunity was assumed to be waning. This is a very important observation made by the authors. The median interval, that means if you take the midpoint, the median interval between previous immune stimulus, now whether that was infection or vaccination, and reinfection in California was about 4 to 5 months, and in New York was about 5 to 6 months. So let's say about 5 months. This only examined US available vaccines, but it came to the conclusion that Moderna is the most effective, followed by Pfizer, and J&J is the least effective vaccine. So if you look at these cohorts, now unvaccinated, if you take that as the reference point, then vaccinated have a 6.5 times lower risk of testing positive in California and about 4.5 times lower risk than in New York. This is a definite advantage. Vaccinations do work. However, look at this. Unvaccinated but previously positive, that means natural infection alone, has a 29 times lower risk of testing positive in California and about 15% lower risk in New York. If we add vaccination to this, you further improve the numbers and you bring it up to 32 times less risk of testing positive in California and about 20 times less risk of testing positive in New York. What this means is, and again, I'm emphasizing, not to say that you should go out and get infected, but if you do, nature in its wisdom or for whatever reason, Omicron has been a fortuitous accident. It is it's something that we should be grateful to nature for. Now, if you're talking about serious disease, if you're talking about hospitalizations, then you look at what is happening in if we take it as unvaccinated, previously infected as the reference, then vaccinated people who do not have previous infection have a 3 times higher risk of hospitalization. Now, in US, there are some complicated hospitalization dynamics working. If you get hospitalized for or with COVID, you get reimbursed for the treatment. If you don't, then you don't get reimbursed. So it is we don't know whether this is because of the severity of disease or it is because of the dynamics of hospitalization. If you look at the hospitalizations in the same cohorts and take unvaccinated, uninfected as your reference point, then the vaccinated alone without any previous infection have about 20 times lower risk. Unvaccinated with previous infection, which is your natural immunity, is 55 times lower hospitalization rates, and vaccinated and infected hybrid immunity is 57.5 times lower rate of hospitalization. So if you see these, it appears like the infection is what is tipping the scale. However, vaccinations do work. And let's look at the graph, how clear it is that the vaccinations work. So these are unvaccinated and uninfected. If you look at where the Delta wave started, you see how the infections are going up. Here they have started additional third dose boost. Here they have started it for immunocompromised here for more than 65 years. The graph is not moving in any desirable direction. The graph has its own direction. These lines which are clustered together, if you look at these, this blue line, this is the rate of infection in vaccinated without previous infection. And you look at these two, the blue and the black line, these are the ones which have infection, previous infection, but the blue is unvaccinated and the black is vaccinated. See how close together they are. The moot point is vaccination alone, vaccination without previous infection, or vaccination with previous infection considerably have an advantage over being unvaccinated. Primary series everybody must have. This is again the rates of laboratory confirmation by vaccination. So if you see the Moderna booster here, and if you see this is vaccinated without previous infection, vaccinated, unvaccinated with natural infection, and this is vaccinated and infected. This is for California. There is no previous infection. These people are the curve of J&J, least effective vaccine. This is no previous infection, but the curve is for Pfizer. This is, if you're looking at risk, the hazard rate, and Moderna, the most effective with the least hazard rate. But look at hybrid immunity here, all intertwined together for all three vaccines. And here, interestingly, the hazard rate of Moderna, you can see, marginally wins over all others. This is for California. This is official CDC data. This is official CDC report. Similarly, J&J, Pfizer, Moderna for New York, and you look at hybrid immunity, all like a mala, intertwined, and Moderna is the best, least hazard ratio. Now, whatever you look for, you will get. If we look at this article, which came out on 27th of October, it says why Israel made the decision to continue to boost. It said that the confirmed infections were going up, though the severity of cases was going down. So their assumption was that boosting offers protection against severe disease. Probably correct, but we have seen with Omicron, their numbers are still going up. So it doesn't matter that they are boosting. This graph is continuing to rise. So they also did the study of 6 months, 5.5 months, 5 months, 4.5 months, and they decided that beyond 4 months the vaccines are ceasing to work. Interestingly, the Pfizer CEO also gave a statement that 2 doses probably not enough. A third booster gives better immunity. Our vaccines are required as primary series of 3 doses. This was a very interesting article, and this lady is a gynecologist. So, reiterating the same point, the fact that natural infection is educating the body to the whole virus, the response is polyclonal. Certain immune escape will be covered by immune coverage from other antibodies, and also the T cell response will be robust. The memory B cells residing in the bone marrow will be sharper. So if we look at what is the first response that comes, it's the IgM response. And then once the viral is starting to clear up, the class switch is happening in which both IgM and IgG are present. And it's from here that you will find IgA and IgE antibodies also coming into the picture from the class switch. The T cells begin to rise within the innate phase of immunity and kind of plateau out, but there is T cell immunity well into the months following initial infection. What we have been saying all along, most neutralizing antibodies target the receptor binding domain of the S antigen, while some bind to the spike N-terminal domain. Others in the S2 domain of the spike protein may be invaluable as they have cross-reactive potential while not being affected by the receptor binding domain and N-terminal domain mutations. Most studies show that trimeric spike protein elicits a range of antibodies derived from many IgG cellular lines that are often commonly engaged in other viral infections as well. There is cross-reactivity from these genes. So if natural immunity is so robust, how long does it last? This is a paper of 24th of January, just 4 days ago. It is very interesting paper because it is talking about people with previous SARS-CoV-1 infection. Now, what they found out was that when a cohort of people who had exposure to SARS-CoV-1 were given AstraZeneca vaccine, their antibody response was skyrocketingly higher than those who had not been previously exposed to COVID-1 and who simply were given the AstraZeneca vaccine for COVID-2. SARS-CoV-1 came 18 years ago. So if you look at this, what becomes important? Now, we have experience of SARS-CoV-1, and now we have limited experience of SARS-CoV-2. If this data is to be believed, then memory B cells, T cells are still educated, retaining their response 18 years after previous infection, and the vaccine boost has given them, if you see here, just see how much the vaccine boost is. So when, interestingly, when we were seeing some anesthetists and intensivists saying कि हमारा तो recordable ही नहीं है, 20,000 है antibody count, maybe, just maybe, they had prior memory of a boost encouraging virus. So there is cross immunity among Sarcoviridae. From the SARS-CoV-1 experience with AstraZeneca vaccine, it looks like this is extremely long-lived. From SARS-CoV-1, we also know that forward protection to some degree has been there. The common cold, however, infects almost everyone and infects them every so often. So not to say that the infection will not happen, but our body over the millennia has developed a system which allows us to remember the pathogens and mount appropriate responses. Vaccines help in that appropriate response. So it is an extremely durable response that we have seen. This has come out in the Lancet also. If abhi sir mere ko bol rahe the कि garam pani piyo nimbu dal ke. So if I were to say what were my symptoms in the Omicron, my pain throat was pure torture, unadulterated torture. I could not speak for 2 days. I did have fever, but nothing to write home about. The cough is persisting. I had fatigue for 2 days. I had significant lightheadedness in the first day, second day, with increased appetite, which Dr. Meenakshi is pointed out, she is also observing, and maybe hypoglycemia. So viruses are known to cause both hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. So what should be your essential medical list? Given that these are the symptoms in majority of people, the essential medical list would be NSAIDs for fever, body pain, fatigue, antihistaminics for cold, cough, etc. Antacids because we want to block the histamine receptors in the gut also. Cough suppressants if it is becoming very troublesome. Demulcents if you continue to have these scratchy feelings, so lozenges. Vitamins. Interestingly, vitamins in this pandemic have become the staple, and rightly so. So vitamin D or sunlight, whether you take natural or you take in a capsule or a shot, vitamin D role has been proven comprehensively in several studies. But vitamin D works better with zinc and vitamin K. And ivermectin, I will continue to promote that despite the threat of cancel culture. Now, these are pharmacologic essentials. But what are the essentials to improve your immunity and improve your outcomes? Sunlight, moderate activity, good clean nutrition, good quality sleep, a relaxed recovery, vagal mental state, anti-anxiety. Even when you recognize that you might be anxious about something, we need to pause, take a few deep breaths, and go into the vagal phase. And anti-inflammatory lifestyle, aiming towards a CRP of less than 1, as Sir used to say. Now, when I was doing this week's research, I have been using Pitodimod, and I have to say I have absolutely no financial gains out of this. And I'm not going to name the brand that I use, but I've been using it for patients who have recurrent allergies and recurrent infections for last 5 or 6 years, Pitodimod. And how it works is, and I will share that screen also. How it works is, share. How it works is, it works on the immature and the mature dendritic cells to improve neutrophils, macrophages, and natural killer cell populations that encounter any infection or foreign bodies. It also works on the Th1, Th2 axis to improve interferon response and decrease IL-4 response. What this means is it enhances mucosal IgA and IgE. This is significant because we need to look at a mucosal immunity. So it's just a thought. I haven't used Pitodimod in COVID, but it is just a thought that it might be of benefit, and I'm probably going to look into it in the coming week. So that's it from me today, and I'm open to questions. One thing, this NeoCoV is not a part of the SARS-CoV family. It is found in bats in caves of South Africa. It has a very different receptor. That too, in the bats, it attaches to the DPP4 receptor, not to the ACE2 receptor. As of now, science says it hasn't and shows no directional preponderance to jump into humans. But our experience with SARS-CoV-2 has been that anything can happen. So we should be careful, but not alarmed.
That was a brilliant presentation. A lot of very basic things, basic sort of reminders that we really needed at this hour. Great representation of all the countries and all the numbers. It's always a pleasure to watch the COVID update at the end of the week. We are open for questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please do jot them down in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and you can ask your questions. Everyone's having COVID pandemic fatigue now.
It's a good thing, right?
Could I ask a question online or make a rather comment?
Hanji, please.
On your right-hand side, that all the Vedic lifestyle motion you have uh, told about good night sleep and good environment, basically, and stress releasing. All those things are very, very easy to say. How do you actually tell your patients how to achieve those?
So Dr. Meenakshi has been doing this very regularly with the Health Educator Forum and the other meetings that she does. We start the meeting with a shift to the vagal mindset. But what I tell them is, and I think there are two very simple exercises that can kick in the vagal mindset. One is vagal breathing. That is 2 deep inhales followed by a breath hold followed by a long exhale. So this is, and I've tried it with my Apple Watch. You can bring down your heart rate by 10 counts by doing just this much. You take a deep inhale, hold, another inhale, hold, and a long exhale, and my heart rate has gone down by 10 counts. So this is one. The other vagal exercise, not as effective as this breathing, but quite effective, is lock your fingers and at the junction of the skull and the neck, put your thumb with pressure, and now just move your eyes to one side, hold for 30 seconds. When you move your eyes, you feel the muscles contracting in the scalp on the fingers. And on the other side, hold for 30 seconds. This brings down the pulse rate by about 4 or 5. So it is documentable. I don't know if there are any scientific studies. I've just been doing my own experiments, my own reading, and checking it out. So I find this works. The third that I think Dr. Meenakshi will be able to more comment upon is, even chanting or listening to music, or these things also bring down the heart rate and hence are evidence of vagal response.
I think the question was, Dr. Nidhi, I mean, you've of course responded to it very well, but the question is, how do you convince the patients to follow this lifestyle? And, for that, Dr. Saroj, the first thing that has to come is the willingness from the patient to set upon this journey to, go towards that parasympathetic lifestyle. So until and unless that willingness is there, it's really difficult for us to convince them as well. And after that, after once we have achieved the willingness, we need to just make sure that they start slow. Just excuse me for a minute, Dr. Nidhi, if you can take over.
Yeah. So when Hanji,
you have mentioned about the pyramid.
Hanji,
how it works and for how long it should be taken.
So I give it for 2.5 months as a standard regime. First 15 days are for children more than 3 years, 400 mg twice a day, and then once a day for 2 months. For adults, it is 800 mg twice a day for 15 days, and then 2 months once a day. I haven't used it for COVID, but I have excellent results for upper respiratory infections as well as recurrent allergies. So I think I want to investigate this a little further, because what we need to find out in extended response and effective response to any disease like COVID is mucosal immunity. And this pitodimod does improve IgA and IgE immunity mucosally. I had a question from Rishabh Jain. I think he wanted to know that if we were to do studies with Covaxin, would they be similar to the graph of natural infection and vaccination? Probably. It is a polyclonal response that you get with Covaxin.
So I think Saroj Kumarji wants to ask another question. So please do go ahead.
Again, either Dr. Nidhi or Dr. Meenakshi, anyone can answer that. Along with the vitamin D3, you mentioned zinc and vitamin K.
Yes.
What about vitamin C?
Oh, definitely. I said all vitamins. I stand corrected if I did not specifically mention vitamin C. So again, there is another drug which has been proposed, I think yesterday or day before, which is called Tempol, for home treatment of COVID. It is primarily an antioxidant, which is supposed to have some protective effect in and anti-inflammatory effect in COVID. So vitamin C, definitely, and in pretty high doses, because if you take 500 mg twice a day, and that is all you're taking, the best thing about vitamin D is whatever is not needed in the body will be excreted in the urine, being water soluble. So you will never have toxicity of vitamin C. Which is what I think Dr. Arora was also saying, Nimbu Pite Raho.
Vitamin C, in fact, we've seen a lot of, there were a lot of these papers, I think even during Delta, where we were seeing with the super high doses of vitamin C were being given, and it was working well for those who were using it. I don't think, anyone who used it had a bad experience. I don't know whether, how effective it is into bringing down the mortality or any of those things. But yes, I think in ICUs also it was given in very high doses. If you remember, Dr. Nidhi, I've even spoken to you in that way. Yeah. So
recently,
I have one
I have
suggestion.
been reading.
Hello.
Yes.
In the recent scenario of the Omicron, testing should be done very less, and the ICU patient should be investigated thoroughly for the further variant.
Say again.
We are doing the testing of the either rapid antigen or the RT-PCR.
Okay.
But those patients who are admitted in the ICU,
Yes.
they should be investigated thoroughly for the further variant of the Omicron. And then we can do the little more about the disease.
They're doing it.
So, yes, one is that they're doing it. And two is that, our response to the pandemic has to be at two levels. One is public health level, which happens with hospital admissions, government initiatives, genome testing, etc. And the other is a personal health level, which happens at our level as treating doctors who interact with patients and who need to be mindful of each action, each transparent communication, and answer basic questions related to health and promote that. So, I always like to repeat what Sanjay, my husband, says, do your own part well, therein all the honor lies. There is a level to which we can reach. That level, as we become more and more influential, becomes higher and higher. But do your own part well, therein all the honor lies for the present.
I think that's a brilliant note to end the session. So we will continue our conversation, but I think on that quote, we will take your leave from the live session. We'll continue our talks offline. A big thank you to all of you for joining in. A big thank you to Dr. Nidhi for doing this with us every week. And also to Dr. Sanjay for those wise words.